The first time Daniel heard his name that night, his blood turned cold. It was not the sound itself that terrified him, but the way it seemed to stretch through the silence of the forest, too soft to be natural, too familiar to ignore. He sat up from his sleeping bag, the fire reduced to faint embers, his breath visible in the chill of the mountain air. Around him, the vast woods were cloaked in a darkness so deep it seemed alive. The crickets had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. "Daniel," the voice whispered again. It was Liam's voice, his best friend, his camping partner, the one who was supposed to be asleep in the tent beside him. Daniel's pulse raced as he turned toward Liam's tent. The zipper was closed. No sound came from inside. The voice came again, this time sharper, more insistent, from beyond the tree line. "Daniel, come here. I need you." Daniel swallowed hard. His first instinct was to call back, but something held him still. There was something wrong, terribly wrong about the way the words dragged through the night air, like a recording slightly warped. It was Liam's tone. Yes, but hollow, stretched thin, like skin pulled too tight over bone. He rose slowly, his boots crunching faintly on the dry leaves. His flashlight trembled in his hand, the beam cutting through the darkness. The trees loomed tall and endless, and the voice seemed to come from deep within them. "Daniel, hurry." This time it was urgent, desperate. It sounded exactly like Liam when he was in trouble, like when they were kids and Liam had fallen through the ice on the river. It clawed at Daniel's memory, at his loyalty, his instinct to protect. He took one step toward the woods, then another. Suddenly, the tent zipper behind him ripped open. "Daniel, stop." Liam's real voice, raw, loud, and panicked, cut through the night. Daniel froze. His heart slammed in his chest. He turned. There stood Liam, pale and wide-eyed, his hair sticking out in messy tufts. "Don't go," Liam hissed, grabbing his arm. "That's not me." A heavy silence fell. The forest seemed to breathe. And then, as if on cue, the voice came again, softer now, almost mocking. "Daniel." But this time, it didn't sound like Liam at all. Daniel's legs felt weak. He clutched the flashlight tighter, shining it toward the woods. But the light only caught the first line of trees before dissolving into shadows. The air had grown icy, unnatural, like something was sucking the warmth from his skin. Liam tugged him back toward the fire pit, his grip iron-tight. "You don't understand," Liam whispered harshly. "They mimic. They lure you. Once you step into the trees, you won't come back." Daniel's throat went dry. He looked at Liam, then back at the forest. His mind spun with disbelief. "What do you mean they?" Before Liam could answer, the voice called again. But this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was many. Dozens of whispers layered together, all speaking his name, spilling from the dark woods in a chorus of imitation. Some sounded like Liam, some like his mother, some like people long gone. "Daniel, help me. Daniel, come here. Daniel." The sound clawed at his brain, tearing at his sense of reality. He stumbled back, gripping Liam's arm. "What the hell is this?" Liam's face was pale in the firelight, his eyes wild. "It's why no one comes here after dark. The forest doesn't just watch, it hunts. And it knows your heart. It knows who you trust. That's how it pulls you in. Daniel's skin prickled. The whispers were getting louder, more insistent. And then suddenly they stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. The woods stood before them, vast and waiting. Then, faintly, from deep in the shadows, came the sound of a woman crying. Not a scream, not a whisper, just quiet, aching sobs. Daniel's chest constricted. His mother. He hadn't heard her voice in years. Not since she passed. But now it was her. Her cries. Her pain. His body betrayed him. His legs shifted forward, ready to move. Daniel. Liam yanked him back, his voice sharp, desperate. It's not her. Do you hear me? It's not her. Daniel shook, torn between the grief and longing in the sound and the terror in Liam's grip. The forest seemed to lean closer, its shadows curling at the edges of the firelight like fingers reaching for him. Why does it want me? Daniel whispered. Liam didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the trees. Finally, he said, because it feeds on the lost, on those who listen. Once you believe what you hear, it owns you. The fire crackled weakly, throwing more shadows than light. Daniel could feel the pull in his chest, an ache like gravity dragging him toward the cries. He shut his eyes, his breath ragged. And then clear as day his mother's voice came again. But this time, it said something different. Daniel, is safe. Just one step. I promise. Daniel pressed his hands over his ears. But it didn't matter. The sound seeped through, not entering from the outside but rising from within his skull, curling around his thoughts like smoke. The fire flickered, casting Liam's face in frantic shadows as he shook Daniel by the shoulders. Look at me. Daniel. Look at me. Daniel's eyes snapped open, locking onto Liam's terrified gaze. His friend's voice was raw, jagged with urgency. If you listen too long, it gets inside. That's how they drag you out there. But even as Liam spoke, Daniel felt it, the tug in his chest growing stronger, like a rope tied around his heart pulling him toward the woods. He could still hear his mother's voice, softer now, weeping, begging. I need you, Daniel. Please don't leave me alone. The words shredded him inside. She had died in her hospital bed, frail, her hand limp in his, whispering through her last breaths. He'd carried the guilt ever since that maybe he hadn't done enough. Maybe he should have noticed the signs sooner. Now that same fragile voice called him again from the forest. He took a trembling step forward before Liam shoved him back hard. Don't you dare. Liam growled, his voice shaking with both anger and fear. It's not her. It will never be her. Daniel's knees buckled. He collapsed to the dirt, gripping his head, trying to shut it all out. The voices had stopped whispering his name and now were only sobbing, weeping, keening each sound a spear to his heart. Liam crouched beside him, his own breath fast and shallow. You can't let it use your grief. That's how it hunts. It digs into the deepest part of you, the wound you never let heal. Daniel looked at him through a haze of tears. How do you know all this? How do you know what it is? For a moment, Liam said nothing. His jaw tightened, his gaze darting back toward the trees as if he feared they were listening. Then, in a low voice, he answered, "Because it tried to take me once too." Daniel froze. "It was years ago," Liam continued, his tone grim, distant. "I came here with my brother. Same forest. Same campsite. We thought we were tough kids. That ghost stories were just campfire nonsense. But that night, I heard him, my brother's voice, calling me from the woods. He'd fallen behind earlier that day, so I thought maybe he needed me." He swallowed hard, eyes clouding with memory. "I went. I followed. The deeper I went, the darker it became. The air was heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. And the voice kept getting closer, always just out of reach. My brother crying, begging for help." Daniel's stomach knotted. "What happened?" Liam's lips thinned. "I nearly stepped off a cliff. Another few feet and I'd be dead. But then my real brother was back at camp the whole time he showed up. Dragged me away." The voice screamed when he pulled me back. "Not like a man. Not like anything human. And since then, I've known what lives in these woods." The fire sputtered, throwing sparks into the night air. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel sat rigid, the horror of Liam's story sinking into his bones. "So it's real," Daniel whispered, his throat dry. "It's not just in our heads." Liam nodded grimly. "Real enough to kill. Real enough to wear the voices of the people you love most. Because that's the hook you can't resist." Daniel shivered violently. His mother's voice still clung to him, curling through his memories, urging him toward the trees. "Then what does it want? Why us?" Liam shook his head. "It doesn't matter why. Some things you don't get answers to. All that matters is surviving until morning." The night stretched on. They piled more wood onto the fire, though the flames offered little comfort. The forest pressed in from all sides, the shadows restless, shifting. The voices didn't stop. They circled the campsite, moving through the trees, rising and falling like the tide. Sometimes Liam's voice, sometimes Daniel's mother, sometimes even strangers they didn't recognize. At one point, Daniel swore he heard his father's laughter, low and bitter, a sound that twisted his stomach with old wounds. He had to bite his own tongue until he tasted blood just to keep from standing up and following. By the third hour, both men were trembling, their nerves frayed. The air grew colder, each breath a plume of white mist. Daniel's flashlight batteries flickered, dimming, and the voices grew bolder. This time they didn't just whisper from the woods. They spoke from right behind them, just outside the firelight, footsteps crunching leaves in sync with the words. "Daniel, Liam, come out. We're waiting." Daniel's heart hammered. He spun with the flashlight, but the beam caught only empty air. Yet the footsteps continued slow, deliberate, circling them like predators. Liam stood, gripping a branch like a weapon. "Stay near the fire," he barked, though his voice cracked. Daniel tried, but the pull inside him was unbearable. Every sob, every plea from the woods hooked into his chest like fishhooks dragging him forward. He whispered to Liam, "I can't do this. Can't ignore her." "You have to," Liam snapped. "It's not her. It's never her." Daniel closed his eyes, tears streaking down his face. But what if there's a chance? Liam seized his collar, shaking him. That's what it wants you to think. That's how it gets you killed. Don't let it win. Daniel. The forest howled suddenly. A gust of wind tearing through the trees, though the air had been still all night. The fire guttered, nearly dying. And for a split second, Daniel swore he saw shapes in the shadows, tall, gaunt, twisted figures, their mouths open in silent screams. He staggered back, gasping. Did you see that? Liam didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the tree line, wide with dread. The voices stopped. The footsteps ceased. The forest was silent again. Too silent. Daniel's ears rang with the emptiness. He clutched his chest, the ache inside almost unbearable. Then, out of nowhere, his mother's voice came one last time, closer than ever, directly in his ear, as though she stood behind him. Daniel, please. He spun, but no one was there. His body lurched forward, against his will, and his boot landed on the very edge of the firelight. He would have taken another step straight into the darkness if Liam hadn't tackled him to the ground. They crashed against the dirt. The air knocked out of Daniel's lungs. Liam pinned him down, shouting in his face, "Don't listen. Fight it. Fight it. Damn you." Daniel's head spun. The voice was still inside him, clawing at his chest, begging him to move. His vision blurred, the firelight dimming. But Liam's voice cut through, raw and desperate, the only anchor he had left. It's not your mother. It's not her. She's gone. But I'm here. And if you go, you'll never come back. Do you hear me? You'll be gone too. Something broke inside Daniel then. The guilt, the grief, the endless ache that had haunted him since his mother's death let it out, choking on a sob that racked his whole body. He clung to Liam, to his warmth, to his realness. And slowly, the pull began to fade. The forest screamed. Not voices, not whisper-san in human shriek that rattled the ground beneath them. The trees bent. The fire roared as if fed by unseen hands. And the air shook with rage. Then, just as suddenly, silence. Daniel and Liam stayed frozen, clinging to each other, too afraid to move. Minutes dragged by. Finally, Liam whispered, "It's angry now. But we made it through the worst of it. Stay awake. Dawn isn't far." Daniel nodded weakly, though his whole body trembled. He didn't know if he could last another hour. He didn't know if he could keep fighting the voices if they came back. But he knew one thing for certain. Whatever lived in that forest wanted him more than anything. And it would not stop until it had him. The night pressed down like a weight, each minute stretching unbearably. Daniel sat near the fire, his arms wrapped tight around his knees. He hadn't spoken in what felt like hours. Every time he opened his mouth, he feared the voices would slip back in, crawling down his throat like smoke. Liam sat opposite him, the branch still in his hands, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion but never leaving the dark tree line. The firelight painted him in orange and black. But beyond that glow the forest was endless, an ocean of shadows. "Don't let your guard down," Liam muttered hoarsely. "That's what it wants. The moment you think you're safe, it'll strike again." Daniel nodded, though his body screamed for rest. His eyelids drooped heavily. But when his head dipped, a faint whisper curled against his ear, sly and mocking. Sleep, Daniel. Just rest. I'll watch over you. He jolted upright, his breath sharp in his lungs. Liam's gaze snapped to him instantly. What is it? They're still here, Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. Liam's face hardened. But before he could reply, the woods stirred again. A chorus of footsteps shuffled among the leaves, circling, closing in. Not frantic, not rushed, measured, deliberate, as though whatever hid in the darkness knew it had time on its side. The fire cracked, sparks shooting upward. Daniel's pulse hammered in his throat as he scanned the tree line. For an instant, between two trunks, he saw it, a figure. Too tall, too thin. Its limbs crooked at unnatural angles. Its face, wrong, blurred, shifting. He gasped. Liam, I see it. Liam cut him off, his voice tight. The figure didn't move. It only stood there, watching, the shadows swallowing it whole except for the glint of two eyes, cold, pale, and unblinking. Then, without warning, it stepped back and vanished into the dark. Daniel shivered violently. What is it? Liam shook his head slowly. It's the thing that wears the voices. It doesn't need to show itself to take you. If you see it, it means it's getting desperate. Daniel wanted to believe he missaw it, that it was just exhaustion. But the weight in his chest told him otherwise. Then the voices started again. But this time, they didn't call Daniel's name. They sang. A low, droning chant drifted from the woods, voices overlapping, weaving into something neither melody nor language. The sound throbbed in Daniel's bones, wrong in every way, as if it wasn't meant for human ears. His vision blurred, nausea rising. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound only grew louder inside his skull. Make it stop. He choked. God, make it stop. Liam shoved more wood into the fire, sparks flying. Don't listen. Focus on me. Look at me. Daniel. Daniel's head snapped toward him. The chant dulled slightly, though it still pulsed in the background like a heartbeat. Liam gripped his shoulder firmly. They're trying to break you. That's all this is. Just noise. Just tricks. Daniel wanted to believe that, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't only tricks. He could feel intent behind the voices, hungry, deliberate intent. Then, as if in answer, the chanting cut off. The silence was so sudden it left Daniel dizzy. And then laughter. High-pitched, childlike giggles echoed through the trees. Dozens of them, playful and cruel. The sound made Daniel's skin crawl. He whispered, "Children." Liam's jaw tightened. Not children. Never children. The laughter circled the campsite. Closer. Closer. Until Daniel swore he felt tiny hands brushing his shoulders, tugging his clothes. He swatted at the air, but nothing was there. Finally, Liam shouted into the darkness, his voice fierce, defiant. You won't have him. Do you hear me? He's not yours. The laughter stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Daniel's heart pounded, the firelight flickering wildly. And then, from deep within the woods, a single voice spoke. Calm. Clear. Human. Liam. Both men stiffened. The voice was smooth, deliberate, exactly like Liam's own voice echoing back at him. Liam, come here. Daniel's stomach dropped. I know what it is. Liam snapped, though his voice wavered. His face paled, his hand gripping the branch so tightly his knuckles turned white. The voice came again, perfectly mimicking Liam's tone. Daniel doesn't trust you. He thinks you'll leave him. But I won't. Come to me. Daniel's throat constricted. The words were knives, sharp and precise. He glanced at Liam, who stared into the darkness, jaw clenched. That's not me. Liam growled, though his eyes glistened with something Daniel had never seen before. Fear not for himself, but of what Daniel might believe. Don't listen to it, Liam urged, turning to Daniel. Promise me you won't. Daniel hesitated. The voice in the woods spoke again, softer, coaxing. Daniel, you know he's hiding something. Ask him. Ask what really happened with his brother. Daniel froze. His stomach twisted. Slowly, he turned to Liam. What does it mean? He whispered. Liam's face was stone, but his silence screamed louder than any words. The fire popped, embers drifting upward. The forest waited, breathless, savoring the tension between them. Liam, Daniel pressed, voice shaking. What happened to your brother? Liam's gaze flicked to him, tortured, torn. Not now. Tell him. The voice urged from the woods, smooth as silk. Tell him the truth. Daniel's mind raced, suspicion digging its claws into him. His best friend. The one saving him tonight, was he hiding something darker? Liam. Daniel whispered again, pleading. Finally, Liam spoke, his voice raw. He never made it home. After that night, he disappeared. They said he ran away, but I know he didn't. The forest took him. Daniel's chest tightened. Usaid was back at camp. I lied. Liam admitted, his voice breaking. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to think I dragged you into this cursed place with blood already on it. Daniel's head spun. The betrayal stung. But deeper still was the terror of the truth. The forest had claimed Liam's brother. The voice in the woods chuckled softly, perfectly mimicking Liam's tone again. See, he never told you. Come to me, Daniel. I'll tell you everything he hides. Daniel shook violently, torn in two. Liam gripped his arm desperately. Don't listen to it. I'm here. Flesh and blood. That thing out there is nothing but lies. But Daniel's mind swirled with doubt, grief, and exhaustion. The forest had sunk its claws deep into him, and every secret, every crack in their friendship, was a wound it could exploit. The fire burned lower. The night felt endless. And Daniel knew with bone-deep certainty if he faltered even once more, the forest would win. Daniel's head buzzed with questions, but he didn't have the strength to ask them. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths as the forest pressed harder, its silence heavier than before. Somewhere far off, an owl screeched, but even that sound seemed twisted, warped, as though it were mocking them. Liam's hand was still clamped around Daniel's arm. His grip wasn't just firm, it was desperate, as if letting go even for a second would mean losing him forever. Listen to me, Liam said quietly, his voice trembling but determined. What I told you wasn't the whole story. I didn't just lose my brother. I heard him, too. Daniel. I followed his voice, just like you almost did tonight. Daniel's stomach lurched. You said he disappeared. Are you saying? Liam's eyes closed briefly, as though he were swallowing down something jagged. When he opened them again, they glistened. I dragged him into the woods myself. I thought I was saving him. He was screaming, calling for help, and I couldn't tell it wasn't really him. By the time I realized, he was gone, pulled out of my hands into the dark. The words hit Daniel like stones. The fire cracked between them, spitting embers into the air. But the night beyond it seemed to lean in closer, listening, feeding. You don't understand. Liam continued, his voice hoarse. That thing, whatever it ices love like bait. It knows exactly which wound to press, which voice to wear. I thought I could resist it, but I couldn't. And now it's trying to take you the same way it took him. Daniel stared at him, breathless. His best friend had carried that guilt for years, buried it beneath lies, and now here they were caught in the same snare. The forest whispered again, softly this time, almost tender. Daniel, he let his brother die. Do you trust him to save you? Daniel squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the words. He wanted to scream, to drown out the sound, but the whisper slid deeper, curling into the cracks of his trust. Liam gritted his teeth and shouted into the dark. Shut up. His voice echoed, swallowed instantly by the trees. The forest laughed low, guttural, inhuman. Then, from the shadows, multiple voices spoke at once. Daniel's mother, Liam's brother, strangers he didn't know. They all layered together, weaving a grotesque chorus. Come to us. We'll keep you safe. Leave the fire. Step closer. The pull in Daniel's chest returned, stronger than ever, like invisible chains dragging him toward the tree line. His body trembled, his boots scraping against the dirt as he inched forward despite himself. No. Liam barked, throwing his arm around Daniel's shoulders, holding him back with all his strength. Daniel shook violently, tears streaming down his face. I can't stop it. Yes, you can. Liam shouted, his voice breaking. You're stronger than this. Don't give it what it wants. The voices grew louder, screaming his name now, stretching and twisting it into shapes that barely sounded human. The fire guttered low, their only defense flickering. Daniel's knees buckled. And then silence. The sudden absence of sound was suffocating. Daniel clutched Liam's arm, panting, terrified of what came next. From the woods, a single figure emerged. At first, Daniel thought it was Liam's same height, same build. His stomach twisted in dread. The figure stepped closer, into the faint edge of firelight, and Daniel's breath caught. It was Liam's brother, or what looked like him. His face was pale, stretched unnaturally, his eyes empty hollows glowing faintly white. His mouth moved, but the words didn't match the lips. Liam, the figure crooned. You left me. You let me fall. But I forgive you. Come with me now. Liam's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came. He staggered back a step, the branch shaking in his hands. The figure reached out an impossibly long arm. Its fingers sharp and black at the tips. "Take my hand, brother. We can be together again." Daniel's heart pounded. He could feel Liam wavering. See the torment breaking him down. "Liam, no." Daniel shouted, grabbing his friend's arm. "It's not him. It's never him." But Liam's breath hitched, tears spilling. "To hear him. Daniel. It's his voice. I've wanted to hear him again for so long." The forest swelled with whispers. Hundreds of them, all repeating, "Go with him. Go with him. Go with him." Daniel shook Liam violently. "If you go, you'll never come back. You'll just be another voice in the woods." The figure's hand stretched closer, fingers nearly brushing Liam's skin. The fire flared suddenly, as though fighting against the darkness. But it was dying fast. Liam's knees buckled. His grip on the branch faltered. Daniel made a choice then. With a shout, he hurled his flashlight directly at the figure. The light spun end over end before clattering against the ground in front of it, the beam cutting across its face. For a split second, the illusion shattered. The figure's skin melted away into writhing shadows. Its face twisted into dozens of shifting formsmen. Women, children, all screaming silently. Its hollow eyes burned brighter, its mouth stretching impossibly wide in a grin of pure malice. Liam gasped, stumbling back. Daniel grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look. "See. It's not him. It never was." The figure shrieked, a sound like tearing metal and broken glass, and recoiled into the woods. The trees shook violently as though alive, branches snapping under the weight of its rage. The fire roared as if in defiance, flames shooting higher. Daniel held Liam tightly, their breaths ragged, their hearts hammering. For the first time, the forest seemed to retreat, the voices fading into distant echoes. But the battle wasn't over. Daniel knew it. He could feel it still watching, still waiting. Liam collapsed to his knees, burying his face in his hands. "I almost went. God. Daniel. I almost went with it." Daniel crouched beside him, his own body trembling. "But you didn't. You're still here. We both are." They sat there, clinging to each other, the fire crackling weakly between them. The forest had tried to claim them both. And though dawn was still hours away, for the first time, Daniel felt the faintest flicker of hope, fragile, but alive, because he had seen the truth. And he had chosen to stay. The forest had grown colder, darker, and more oppressive as the night deepened. The fire crackled faintly, fighting against the suffocating chill. But its warmth no longer seemed to reach David the way it once did. His hands trembled, whether from the cold or from the lingering terror of what he had experienced. He couldn't tell. What he knew for certain was that something out there wanted his trust, his fear, and perhaps his very soul. Mark sat across from him, his face stern, watchful, but his eyes betrayed his own unease. He had seen it too, the mimicry, the perfect imitation of his voice coming from the forest. And in that moment, when David had nearly walked away into the shadows, Mark's sudden grip had been the only thing keeping him alive. "You can't listen to it," Mark said firmly, staring into the flames as though they could reveal answers. "That thing, it knows you. It learns your weaknesses. Nearly had you. David swallowed hard. But how? How could it sound exactly like you? Every word. It was you. Even the way you pause. The tone in your voice, it was perfect. No animal can do that. Mark's jaw tightened. That wasn't an animal. That was something else. Something old. David shook his head. This doesn't make sense. Things like this don't exist. They can't. Mark looked up at him sharply. You heard it, David. You looked into that darkness and nearly walked straight into its arms. You can't deny it anymore. David shuddered, remembering the chilling call, the way it had slithered into his mind, making him believe that it really was Mark, lost and calling for help. If Mark hadn't appeared at that exact moment, if he hadn't grabbed him, it might have been the last step David ever took. The forest groaned with wind, branches shifting, shadows lengthening. Every noise seemed magnified. Every crack in the distance a potential whisper. Every rustle a lure. They tried to settle back down. But sleep was impossible. David lay in his sleeping bag, eyes wide open, staring at the fabric ceiling of the tent. Mark sat just outside, watching, as if guarding against the thing in the forest. But the voices came again. They began faintly, at first barely audible above the wind. David! His blood ran cold. It was his mother's voice. Soft, familiar, trembling. David! Please! I need you! His heart ached. He sat up, listening. The sound was coming from just beyond the tree line. He forced himself to whisper, Mark, do you hear that? Mark didn't turn. His posture stiffened. Don't listen to it. Don't answer. But the voice was insistent now, cracking with desperation. David, it's me. Help me. Please. I'm hurt. Tears welled in David's eyes despite himself. His mother had died 5 years ago, but hearing her voice so clearly broke something inside him. The forest was cruel. It had found the deepest wound in his heart and sliced it open. He pressed his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just external. It was inside his head, vibrating through his skull. David, why won't you come? Don't you love me? His chest tightened. He wanted to run, to see her face again, to prove she wasn't gone. But he remembered Mark's words. It learns your weaknesses. The fire cracked, sputtered, and died down. Shadows stretched further, swallowing the clearing. Mark's voice, steady and commanding, cut through the air. Stay here. No matter what you hear, you stay with me. David's hands shook as he clenched his blanket. It sounds like her. How does it know? How could it know? Mark turned toward him finally, his expression grim. Because it's been here long before you or me. Long before your mother. Long before any of us. It doesn't just know, it feeds on it. Your memories. Your grief. Your trust. The night dragged on in agonizing tension. Neither of them dared move far from the fire, which they kept feeding even as fatigue pulled at their bodies. And then, as if the night had grown impatient with its own silence, came the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, crunching against the dried leaves just beyond the glow of the fire. David froze. His heart thundered. He could see nothing in the dark, only the endless wall of trees and blackness. Who's there? Mark demanded, his voice sharp. The footsteps stopped. Then, chillingly, came Mark's own voice. "Let me in. It's cold out here." David's head snapped toward Mark, who sat right beside him, his face pale, jaw tight. Both of them stared into the forest, where the voice had come from. The firelight flickered, shadows dancing on Mark's features. He looked shaken, but he didn't move. "It's trying to get close," he whispered. "Don't let it." The voice came again, identical, flawless. "It's me. Don't be afraid. Just let me in." David clutched his knees, trembling uncontrollably. The mimicry wasn't just convincing, it was perfect. No difference, no flaw, nothing to distinguish it from the real Mark. And that realization was perhaps the most terrifying of all. What if, at some point, he couldn't tell the difference? What if the Mark beside him wasn't the real one anymore? Hours crawled by. Dawn remained elusive. The night felt endless, eternal, as though time itself had slowed to prolong their torment. When the first pale light finally filtered through the trees, David thought he would collapse from sheer relief. But even with daylight, the forest remained oppressive. The weight hadn't lifted. They packed their things quickly, both desperate to leave. The forest seemed unwilling to let them go. The silence almost waiting, watching. As they walked back toward the trail, David couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every few steps, he glanced behind him. The trees stood still, but their silence was too heavy. "Don't look back," Mark warned. "That's how it pulls you in. Keep your eyes forward." David obeyed, but unease gnawed at him. The urge to glance back was overwhelming, almost unbearable. And then, just as they neared the edge of the trail, David heard it again. His mother's voice. Soft, gentle, loving. "David, don't go. Stay with me." His legs faltered. He stopped walking. Tears blurred his vision. Mark grabbed his arm, yanking him forward. "Don't listen. It's not her." "But what if it's not her?" Mark shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. The illusion shattered. David sobbed, letting himself be pulled forward. Step by step, they moved away from the suffocating woods. By the time they emerged from the forest's edge, the sun was finally rising. Golden light spilled across the landscape, warm and merciful. For the first time in hours, David could breathe freely. But he knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the forest hadn't given up. It had only let them go because it wanted to. They didn't speak much during the hike back to the car. Every sound, every rustle of wind, felt like an echo of the nightmare they had just endured. But as they reached the parking lot, David turned to Mark, his voice trembling. "What was that thing?" Mark didn't answer right away. He stared back at the tree line, his eyes distant, haunted. Finally, he said, "It's something that waits. Something that knows. It's not the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last." David's stomach churned. "You've seen it before." Mark looked at him, and for the first time, David saw real fear in his eyes. "Yes. And next time, it might not let us go." David thought the nightmare would end once they left the forest behind. But that night, back at home, he dreamed. He was standing at the edge of the woods again, the trees swaying, the darkness calling. And from within the forest, he heard his mother's voice whisper, close and tender, "David, you can't run from me forever." He woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat, the sound still echoing in his ears. And he realized something that made his blood turn to ice. The whisper had followed him home,